Good morning, everybody. Welcome to B4 Live. This morning we've got Matt Peachy from Oxford City Council and Ahmed Goga from Oxfordshire EP. Good morning, gents. How are you?
Morning.
Morning. Hi.
Good, thanks. Welcome to my bedroom, but not my bedroom, my son's bedroom, as you can probably tell from the hungry caterpillar on the wall behind me.
No need to be shy, Matt. We know it's your bedroom, don't we? And we've got the caterpillar close to your head, which is strategic placement, no doubt. Good to see you. We might be joined by Craig Bower from Oxfordshire County Council shortly, which would be great if you can do. Yes, he is going to be joining us. So yes, just going to get back to him on that one. So we kick off. Matt, do you want to give everybody a bit of background about who you are, what you do, and the role you play at City?
Yeah. So thank you, Richard. Thanks for setting up today's meeting. I'm Matt Peachy. I'm Economic Development Manager at Oxford City Council. I know some of you, and good to see some of you again. It's been a while. Within what we do in economic development at the City Council, it's been an interesting 6 weeks, and you don't need me to tell you how difficult this previous period, this last 6 weeks or so, and the period to come has been for business. I mean, we don't need to throw those statistics around, but just one, which gives us a sense of how difficult this period has been with the lockdown, is that 56 drop in credit card transactions in Oxford versus 32% across the UK. So we're seeing a real demand shock across the economy here in Oxford. We, the City Council, are a trading organisation as well, and we recognise that pain ourselves. We're feeling that in terms of parking and other trading that the likes of Oxford Direct Services do. So the last few weeks, I mean, we've really been trying to respond and help businesses who are suffering in this current period, make sure we're mobilising the grants that government has put through the local authority and supporting businesses with any questions they've got. But that's the response phase, that's that crisis phase. We are now hoping with your views to turn our minds to what's next. We've had the government advice over the weekend. It's coming for a lot of criticism, but we do have some form of a roadmap out of this, conditional, obviously. So we know there's a phasing for economic recovery, and we need to think about that positively as to how we, the City Council, how the LEP and other partners work towards bringing that recovery back in a faster, better, and hopefully more sustainable, inclusive way as well, because we've got an opportunity to rebuild in a different way. But we do have to rebuild, and that's what we're wanting your views on. In terms of our thinking around how this economic recovery takes place, and let's hope it does take place soon, we're thinking about it in phases. So the response phase is the one we're in now, where businesses are in crisis mode, and grants, lobbying government for more support, answering questions, and trying to understand what the business needs are and feed those bits of support through as easily and quickly as possible. It's been a challenging and busy period, and some of the stories from business are very, very concerning. But the next phase, looking forward positively, is this restart. So if we imagine the next 3 to 6 months as hopefully that our number stays below zero, we do get some loosening of restrictions. We do have an opportunity to work together to try and maximise the restart possibilities. We know that in this next period, it's not going to be a 100% economy. It's not going to be a 90% economy. But if we can generate consumer and business confidence in some of the things that they can do and can do safely, then we feel there's an opportunity there to at least have a better restart of the economy than we might otherwise have. And we're particularly interested in your views as a group of businesses as to how you feel that restart can be optimized. So that's one question I'd like to pose for you as we go through this. But the recovery phase is the next one, 6 to 18 months. There's still going to be some restrictions. There's still going to be social distancing, but things will become more normal, and we will be looking to sustain the economy, working with the Voice, with the LEP and others and businesses to try and position Oxford for success. The longer term, the reorientate phase, we're calling it. So you've got response now, restart coming up now, recover over the 6 to 18 month period, and then reorientate the economy. We know there are going to be social changes. Some of these will stick. We know there are going to be structural changes in the economy that will perhaps be accelerated. So post-vaccine, when we have a new normal, how do we reorientate the economy to be successful? There are a couple of key points I would say that within that sort of phasing approach, we recognise that Oxford and Oxfordshire has a lot of strengths. And within the 7 themes we've got within our recovery planning thinking, one is absolutely building on the strengths we've got. Whilst tourism may not feel like it's a strong sector now, it absolutely will bounce back. And the question is in what way will it bounce back, and how will it bounce back? So we want to build on those sectors like tourism and science and technology and work with you to do that. But we also think there's some other key things we should do. Focus on infrastructure and getting that investment, shovel-ready projects. Focus on neighbourhood regeneration, but also focus on the city centre and how we can reactivate the city centre as quickly as possible, recognising those social changes and the ways that people consume may be different as well. And absolutely important, another theme here is getting people back to work. There is going to be some change in the labour market. It's probably going to be extremely significant. How do we try and manage that and work together with training organisations and you as employers to make sure that we can divert labour as quickly as possible to the growth areas and make sure that people do come out of this quite successfully. So I'm conscious I've only got 5 minutes, but we are really interested in your thoughts on this next phase. We're going to have to be flexible in our approach and our strategy. We don't know all the information, but if we can restart in a way that gets that economy ticking up and gets some percentage of normal activity going, even under social distancing, then that's the thing we should do. We're very interested in your views on how we go about that.
Brilliant, Mike. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. Ahmed, similarly, if you can maybe give everybody tuned in a bit of background about you and your role at the LEP and your perspective on the economy at the moment.
Thanks, Richard, and good morning to everyone. My name's Ahmed Goga. I'm Director of Strategy at OxLEP. For those of you who don't know, OxLEP is the economic development agency for Oxfordshire that works with government and the private sector to attract investment and job creation and business growth into the county. We've been working extensively over the last few weeks with government and with private sector to try and bring some support and stabilisation to the economic position that we find ourselves in. Oxlep have released over £1 million of additional support into business support activities to help companies that are experiencing economic challenges through COVID, for a mixture of grants, one-to-one support, and also accelerating additional innovation and technology transfer support that business may be able to utilise whilst they pivot out of the crisis at the moment as well. So the whole suite of investments that we've brought into play, and there's a lot of more detail available on the Oxlep website where you can find out all the various support measures that are in place. I think there's a few things to reflect on here, and I think Matt helped very helpfully set out the need for us to think in a structured way around how we respond to this phase, because there is a risk that there is a frenzy at the sort of the response phase and not enough thinking done about how we actually come out of this and how we build resilience into our businesses and into our economies as well. The government has announced a number of measures, and it's still early days to see how those are impacting. So the business interruption loan scheme was launched. A lot of criticism of it in its early days, but there's been about 10,000 companies now that have come through that, and substantially about £4 billion or so of pounds have now been loaned. And I understand from the banking sector and UK finance that that's now coming through as well. But also there's been other measures that have been put into place that have also some additional support for small companies. You've got the bounce back loans which have been introduced recently for very small firms as well. And we've got the opening today of the self-employment schemes as well to help those who are self-employed claim back income that they have lost through the COVID process. And of course, yesterday's announcement on furlough as well, which is now extended to the end of October, which has probably had the single most important impact for businesses and across the economy as well. I think there are some things we should factor into this process as well. First of all, there are sectors that have struggled. It's important to recognise that. The tourism and visitor economy sector in particular has been significantly impacted. It supports 40,000 jobs in Oxfordshire. It's sometimes overlooked as such a key market, contributing over £2.4 billion a year to our economy. There's a general agreement that that's not going to recover anytime soon, and certainly not in the shape it currently enjoys. Oxfordshire is one of the top 5 destinations for international visitors into England, and with the restrictions on international travel and also with foreign students and amongst other things, that's going to have a substantial impact on that sector and how we pivot. Experience Oxfordshire undertook a recent survey. It estimated that over £138 million a month is being lost in revenue for the sector at the moment, and well over a half are at risk of shutting altogether, and over 90% of staff are in furlough in that sector. Now that is substantial, not least because it employs people who may be in lower paid or lower skilled jobs who are going to be even more exposed to the risks of redundancies as well. But also, I think there are other areas that we need to think about. Supply chains, for example, in our manufacturing businesses who have enjoyed growth, but may need to pivot out of the markets they're in because the supply chains that they may have previously had from China or from further afield are going to shorten. And it's about how you help those businesses to transition either into new markets or to deepen where they are presently and build more resilience into the supply that they have currently had or will need to build once we've moved into the renewal phase as well. And then finally, I think this is the third thing I want to emphasize. With all of that challenge and with all of the devastating loss of life that the country has seen, Oxfordshire has been proven to be a beacon of hope for the nation. Our science and technology clusters have been at the vanguard of identifying vaccines, testing, clinical trials, and it's something we should be very proud of. But also it gives a shop window for the entire economy to everyone else about what Oxfordshire's role is for the UK and also internationally. And that's a really important thing to hold on to for all businesses in the economy, because that will drive potentially further interest, investment and demand moving forward. And I would really welcome views from the colleagues joining the call today about how we build on that visibility that Oxfordshire needs to continue to promote and elevate so that we continue to attract investment moving forward and retain the level of interest that was there before COVID struck us. And also how we maintain a strong, vibrant business space that continues to create jobs for young people, where my biggest concern is where you've got potentially a whole generation in the class of 2020 of apprentices and young people who are coming through their education who may be at risk of long-term unemployment, where jobs are no longer there or the apprenticeship opportunities that they thought they had are going to be withdrawn. And it's something for us to think about as well as part of this discussion as well.
Thank you, Ahmed. Really appreciate it. As I put in the chat function, if anybody does have any questions for either Ahmed or for Matt, we have got Craig with us, but sadly, Craig doesn't have audio capability. So if anybody has any questions for Ahmed or Matt or Craig, I mean, if you've got questions for Craig, I can put them to him separately and maybe get an answer for you later. Oh, you are there, Craig? Oh, no.
I think I am, yes, just about.
Oh, you are, brilliant. Oh, fantastic, Craig. Are you able to give us a little bit of background about where you are? Not about
yes, yeah. So I mean, obviously, the timing of this COVID outbreak has triggered a massive escalation in interest in the digital infrastructure domain. We fortunately are in a position whereby we have got live contracts that we're continuing to execute for improving full fibre delivery across Oxfordshire, including the DEFRA funded project, which is focusing on small businesses in rural Oxfordshire, which is a project that'll bring about 1,300 further businesses into the full fibre world. But I think moreover, there's an agreement now across county, which is signed off as a strategy that digital infrastructure is an investment portfolio that we will be seeking to continue working on over the next 3 or 4 years. And it's that confluence of full fibre connectivity as well as 5G that I think is quite an exciting advent for Oxfordshire. So I think we're quite well placed, and I think we have the right strategy to help deliver outcomes. And I think there's a renewed emphasis and support for the programme. I guess that's it in summary.
Richard, you're on mute.
Apologies, I was on. Then on mute. So apologies. We've got a few questions already through, but we had some pre-submitted questions. Up for either, maybe Matt, if you'd like to answer first, then Ahmed, then Craig. What do you see are the greatest challenges to recovery, and how optimistic are you all about a full recovery, and why?
Okay. Yeah. Well, firstly, I am optimistic about recovery. I mean, you look at B4 and the way you've adapted to this situation around lockdowns and closures. A lot of your business is based on, doing events, and you've managed to pivot to going online quite quickly. And a number of businesses have done that. So I'm optimistic that, given we've all had to adapt very quickly over the last 6 weeks, that some of that adaptation will stick, and it will allow people to work more flexibly. It will allow people to work from home more. It will allow a blended version of that, because we still are going to need those offices and face-to-face meetings. But what it will allow is some additional capacity and some additional flexibility in recovery. And I think that's quite important to get a sense of. It will also have given businesses an opportunity to really think about how they adapt and how they innovate and how they move into new markets going forward. So, necessity is the mother of invention. So I think we'll absolutely see a bounce back. It will look very different. There'll be difficult times ahead, but I think we'll see a number of our economy come out of this stronger and leaner and more able to function, and I would hope a sustainable way. And obviously, one of those particular challenges, going back to your questions, is around how we get people into work. So, the latest government guidance doesn't suggest people get on public transport. So how do we rearrange the streets as we're looking for a restart? How do we ensure there's enough space for people to walk and cycle and still adhere to social distancing? And how do other businesses do that so they can open in a certain way? So I think anything we can be doing collectively to try and enable things to happen during that period of continued social distancing is a challenge. But now is a time when we really need to pilot and try new things in order to enable people to get back to doing some business, and absolutely to give consumers some confidence that there is the opportunity to go out and spend some money and spend some time in places like Oxford or elsewhere. So we really need to understand what we can do in the current scenario and make the best of that. And I think that is the current challenge. There's a longer term challenge that Ahmed put together quite well in terms of how we reorientate longer term.
Brilliant, thanks, Matt. I know you obviously answered this to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think we have to have some honesty in this debate and this conversation, and there's going to be some pain. There is just no way to hide from that. The idea that was previously mooted, that there would be a V-shaped recovery, so we'd have a sharp contraction, and then we have a rapid acceleration very quickly after lockdown was eased. I think that the general consensus now is that is not going to be the case. And I genuinely think that there's going to be a real challenge in the early autumn as we move towards the gradual tapering off of furlough, and where businesses are going to have to make some very, very difficult decisions. And I think we have to brace ourselves for some significant redundancies in certain sectors. I think that's just something we have to start to plan for now and think about how we start to respond to that. And that's why labour market interventions are going to be very important, and they can't wait until those redundancies are actually materializing. I would encourage all businesses who are currently furloughing to be using this time to be really looking at their workforce plan and to be tactically thinking about, if they need to retain staff, which we sincerely hope they do, they integrate their training strategy with their business strategy. It's no point in looking at a business plan that looks to pivot into different places, but then your workforce is not there to help you make that happen. And so I really hope that the period that the Chancellor has given now allows us to use that time effectively. In other cases and in other sectors, I am actually hugely optimistic, not least for the points I've made before, because we have fantastic core business base built around science and technology that is going to flourish and thrive, and actually going to lead in many cases some of the recovery work. And what we've got to do is make sure that where those opportunities are being created, we're creating pathways for people to start to get opportunities into those jobs through much better skills development. And then one final thing I would say for businesses in particular, any business that has not significantly invested in their digital platforms and in their online mechanisms are going to be in significant trouble. Now, this was something that we talked about at length for a number of years now, and some businesses have gradually moved towards a much sharper online capability. But I think as part of the tactical planning that businesses need to do moving forward, they have really got to think very clearly about what that online platform now does in terms of driving market share, how you change business development activity overnight that's moving towards an online basis, What do you need to do in terms of your suppliers as well, who are then may need to move toward a more integrated online service that helps you as well? These are some fundamental structural things that businesses need to think about as part of their resilience planning as well.
Thank you, Ahmed. Craig, do you want to add anything to Matt and Ahmed's comments?
Not really. I'll just support exactly what you're saying. It's pretty much my thinking is that we do have the fortune in Oxfordshire of having a very high proportion of technology type firms, which I think will be less impacted by the outbreak. And I think that will help prime the local economy to a certain extent. Support absolutely the view about the investments in digital platforms. And obviously my perspective on that, from where we come from, is digital platforms can only work with good digital connectivity. So it's imperative that we keep focused on making sure that people can actually get connected, systems get connected to each other as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Craig. So conscious of time, and we've got about 4 questions to ask, so maybe we can limit those to a minute each. I just wanted to make a quick comment sort of back to you guys that have joined us kindly this morning. We had a sort of pre-chat about this webinar yesterday. And really, the questions coming from Ahmed and Matt focused around how you'd like to see the local authorities engaging with the Oxfordshire businesses post-COVID and helping sort of come to resolutions and solutions as quickly as possible. So your feedback, not necessarily now, but to me would be great that I can pass on to Ahmed and to Matt. And also with Oxfordshire Voice, we've been running forums for the past year with a mixed amount of success, but I see this is a great medium through which we can engage with local businesses effectively, providing you guys with the opportunity to speak with the likes of Matt and Craig and Ahmed and their colleagues, and to effectively get some solutions for some of the key issues that will be facing all of us going forward. So if you're in support of this sort of maybe monthly catch up with local authorities, then it'd be good to get your thoughts or other ideas as to how we can sort of engage more effectively going forward. So in terms of, so if you want to submit those sort of your thoughts to us on that, that would be great, and I'll coordinate those responses. The first question we have is Michael Pawley from Proficio. What impact do you think the shift to remote working will have on the demand for office space and our city town centre economies? Matt, maybe one for you?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, and we know there's going to be a shift in the way offices are used, but what we don't know is the extent of that and how that's going to change, because there are people that are commuting out of Oxford into London. Will they now perhaps want to touch down in city centre or neighbourhood enterprise spaces and flexible workspaces? And what will the various occupiers in Oxford do with the space they have? And I think that we just have to watch that very closely. But what I will say is this, that the problem we had until very recently, and conscious Richard Venables is here and will know something about this, the problem we've had is that we've had a shortage of office space available for expansion. And we've seen a lot of that space taken quite quickly. Perhaps now that does give us the opportunity to look at how we can have a creative use of our assets. A lot of those assets are owned by the city council, perhaps the county council or the colleges. But with those properties, what can we do with them based on the new market we find ourselves in? We have a couple of projects we're working on at the moment. One at 1 to 3 George Street, where we're looking to bring forward a workspace. We're trying to bring that forward in a way that is post-COVID-19 proof. We're looking at others around the city as well. We still think there will be some fundamental demand for workspace for smaller businesses. But that said, we don't have all the answers, and I think we just need to really watch that space closely. And there will be some acceleration of the way that people use offices, and that will change things.
Well, we've got Richard here actually. Richard, did you want to add in with any comments?
Yeah, I think it's real food for thought. I think it's just so difficult to predict where this will go. How the market will shape. I think there will be.
Sorry, do you just want to maybe just share with those that might not know? I know there's most of the world does, but if you just maybe give a bit of background as to who you are.
Oh yeah, Richard Venables from VSL, so Commercial Property Agents.
Thank you.
In Oxford, and we were already having chats with clients about consolidating offices, changing working practices, investigating how many people work from home. At the same time, people are thinking, well, we actually need to create more space in the office to provide for that social distancing and meeting room space. So while some people will go back home, there's need for greater space in the office. So that might counter. But I think Ahmed's right about science and technology being the backbone of a lot of what we do. And I think that there's a big positive there. I think the big issue though is the tourism and the leisure sector, which are, you know, it is going to be a long and rocky road to come back from where we were.
Thank you, Richard. I don't know whether Ahmed or Craig wanted to comment on that particular question, or are we happy for us to move on to the next one? And generally, we know the session is due to go to 11:30. If everybody's happy to, I appreciate some of you will have other commitments, we can take it forward through to 11:45. If I haven't managed to ask your question, I'll submit it to all three of our panelists and with your contact details, so hopefully we can come back to you. So Ahmed, Matt and Craig, are you happy to hang on with us?
Yeah. I was wondering who Richard Venables was. Now I know.
Oh.
I saw a question on are there any proposals to trial electric scooters in the city there, Richard? From Simon Knott. Just quickly to say that the city and the county council are working on a transport survey, which is about, you know, how can we make the most of this opportunity in terms of getting the transport network up and running in the best way possible, given what we've got. So we will share a survey with those of you here in order to try and get a sense of that. And, you know, the questions we'll have are, you know, how many staff are going to be traveling, and how do you expect your consumers and your customers to travel, and what are those changes you're expecting, and what would you like to see? So on that particular issue of transport, we will have a follow-up for you to get into more detail.
Brilliant, thank you, Matt. And sorry, Richard, thank you for your contribution as well. Simon, hopefully that helps. Brilliant, great. If you can share that with us, Matt, then we'll get that out to everybody as part of the follow-up for this particular session. John, I don't know if you want to come on and ask your question, or would you like me to ask for you?
Richard, you can ask for me, or I can pose it. Yeah, basically, it's great that there's grants and loans available, but sometimes the businesses need a bit of education on how it's best to use that. In the last 8 weeks, we've had a lot of organisations come to us to say we can take our service online, but we're not sure how to do it. But it always comes back to that question around budget and cash available. And the long and short of it is, in the current times, they just haven't got the funds to properly get themselves online, change their service, product offering to get out there in front of the audience. And I just wondered whether some of the grants and money that's available is going to be packaged in a way that they almost have to use it for their online or e-commerce offering.
Thank you, John. So not sure which one of you would like to answer one.
Let me pick some of that up, Richard. The packages of support that Oxford have available actually do pivot it directly to what John is just saying. Okay, we've got the Innovation Support for Business program. We've also got Escalate, and both of those existing programs allow businesses to use funds to help them to look at their business and potentially pivot into new technology areas. So absolutely, those are there. In addition to that, the additional support I mentioned at the start of the session, which we'll be rolling out as well, will also have resilience elements to it. That's specifically about how businesses respond to the COVID challenge to their business, and how the investment can be used to help them retain their current position, but also pivot into new areas. So John, please contact the Business Growth Hub at Oxford Business. The details are on the Oxford website, and all your clients and you can work with the team in establishing what's the most appropriate funding package. There are some substantial funds available. The grant that we are going to be launching in the next week or so, for example, on the COVID response side, there'll be up to £5,000 of revenue cash, and also up to £10,000 of capital cash available for businesses to apply for as a bundle, specifically to help businesses respond to the COVID challenges that they're facing as well. And that sort of stuff that you just described will be sort of things we'll be very interested in exploring further.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ahmed.
I would just add one thing to that. I think that a lot of the funding that's come out of government, whether it's furloughing, whether it's self-employment income, whether it's the business grants that have gone to business ratepayers, have been about, getting through this demand shock and getting money to businesses to keep them going and keeping people in their jobs. But I think with any kind of recovery plan like this, I certainly hope that central government is thinking, what type of fund do we need in place when businesses are cash strapped to allow them to pivot to the next stage and to bring that forward, given that, that's going to require some investment in capital. So I certainly hope that we will certainly lobby, and we are lobbying government for that type of funding, for further funding to get directly into business. And I think it's something that we need to look at and try and target towards a strong recovery. It can't all just be about sort of keeping things in limbo. It has to be about how you innovate towards a strong recovery as well.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Grant Hayward and Collaborants.
Yeah, hi everyone. Grant Hayward. I support purposeful businesses and social enterprises. And I do that in a number of ways. And one of which, actually, just to reiterate what Ahmed said, is working with OSEP and through the funded Oxlep programme. And I would say, John, that is a tremendous, that was there before, and that's becoming increasingly important. And I think just as an overall big up to the LEP, certainly in terms of the small, purposeful social enterprise and enterprising charity type business, that Escalate programme has been absolutely essential. I mean, the amount of, you can imagine, small organisations, charities that need the support, and there's a range of ways we're supporting them through workshops, peer-to-peer support, the grants, one-to-one support I'm providing as well. So that's just a big up for Oxlep and Escalate. But my question actually is from Matt. Sorry to put you on the spot, mate, but some of these organisations I'm supporting, I've only just sort of been made aware that clearly rent is a problem. And I was really interested to hear your opening scenario of the way we're suffering. And we even know before this, there are challenges around the retail sector. So I'm just curious about the City Council's approach to rents. I understand they're not making any concessions, and in some cases there's significant increases. And whilst I accept that the City Council needs income like the rest of us, rather than getting income over these next 6 months, it obviously wants long-term tenants and also a long-term thriving economy. So anything around rents from the council as a landlord?
Yeah, that's a good one. You've definitely put me on the spot there. Thanks for that, Grant. Yes, we are a landlord, and a lot of our property is retail property. Something like 210 tenants in that area. A lot of the colleges in the city are the same. And you make a really good point that retail's going through a structural change anyway. And if you insist on rent across the board, then some businesses are going to go by the wayside quicker. And what tenants are they going to be to replace them? So there is a need to think about our long-term mutual interest. And certainly the approach I understand our property colleagues are taking is that they are trying to say to all of those tenants that access this business support, access everything you can, but certainly have a conversation with us as your landlord on a best way forward. I'm not close to any of those individual conversations, but that's certainly the approach we're looking to take. It's a case of having a dialogue with our tenants to make sure we can come to a successful conclusion, recognizing that we're all suffering in this, and we don't want businesses to go out of business. We don't want to lose those tenants. So that is a real challenge, because at the other side of this, we've got homelessness services, we've got services for youth in some of our disadvantaged neighbourhoods who rely on that sort of 11 million income a year to see those services that support vulnerable people in our locality hubs. So there is this two sides of it where, yes, we need to have a commercial arrangement. Yes, we need to be flexible, but we also need to recognise that income is going in directly into helping local people. So there's no easy answers with this one, Grant, but we at least, and we've had that debate internally, we at least are trying to take that case-by-case basis of understanding where the issues are for business and help where we can. So yes, that's a difficult challenge, but one way.
I think it's worth mentioning, Matt, also the imminent introduction of the discretionary fund as well, where there's some further funds that local authorities will be able to release. The design of that is just literally happening right now, and that will be targeted at those businesses that still haven't been able to access support through the various channels that have already been made available. And that will include very small businesses at a particular rateable value below what's already been announced, and also within the visitor economy again as well. The design work is still happening on that grant, so it's difficult to say much more, but I know the councils are working hard to try and put some additional measures in place. There literally was a communication this morning from departments confirming what support will be made available, and the councils are in Oxfordshire are working with LEPs and other partners to make that start to become operationalised. So you'll hear more about that in the coming week or so.
Thanks, Hamish. What was that called? Sorry.
Well, it's called the Discretionary Fund. I don't know if we're branding it or anything, or it's just going to be stuff that's accessible through individual councils, whoever is the business rate collector.
Yeah, so it's targeted at businesses with fixed property costs who haven't been able to access the self-employment scheme, and haven't been able to, small businesses, and haven't been able to access the grants for business rate payers. So people on the list there might include those that are in serviced offices where they don't pay the business rates directly. They may include B&Bs that actually pay council tax but still have significant property costs. And it could include other sort of market traders who have fixed property costs as well in some of their arrangements, and you know, ongoing costs. And the grants will be 25k for the largest, 10k otherwise, and then some multiple up to 10k as well. I think the uplift for the city council was 5% on 25 million. So 25 million is going to all those businesses that do qualify. Then you've got circa 1.25 to try and get to the places it's needed most. We get the business guidance, the government guidance on that today, I believe. I think you might have seen it before me, Ahmed. And then we've got to try and operationalise it. So we're meeting with our business rates team, who can do a lot of the payment end of it, on Friday, and we'll try and get it moving as quickly as possible, recognising there won't be enough and it won't be quickly enough, but we'll have to do our best with it.
Brilliant. Thank you. Good stuff. The final question now, Nick Rattle. Nick, if you'd like to come to screen.
Thanks, Richard. Nick Rattle, Oxford Brookes Business School, and developing our offer on scaling businesses there. My question was around linking some of Ahmed's comments earlier about what sounds to be a massive loss of jobs in the visitor economy, and the fact we do have potential growth areas in the county, and what we can do to try and support the transition between the two, which isn't immediately obvious, perhaps.
Yeah, hi Nick. I think there's a certain amount of work that will need to be done with all those businesses moving forward as part of their business planning. But I think what companies need to be thinking about in that sector is they are service and customer facing businesses. So what sectors do require customer facing support and actual supplies as well? Sometimes you can focus just within your existing sector and think that that's the only place you can work. But there are ways you can pivot. You've got hotels, restaurants and others, particularly who could be providing different forms of food and other services to other sectors. There was a really interesting conversation I had earlier this week. The health sector is going to expand dramatically over the next few months, and also is going to require a lot more services as part of that expansion. I'm not just talking about the health service itself, but also the supporting areas, care homes and other supporting infrastructure. What can businesses who provide services through the visitor economy also pivot into that market, for example? And there'll be other examples that we could explore as well. That's why I think the real business planning and really tactical thinking about what your core product offer is, what you can pivot out of and into, is going to be a really important part of the next quarter. And so that real clear business and resilience thinking that entrepreneurs and business owners need to do is really important. This is the key time for them to be thinking about that. There are other sectors that will be continue to require support as well, and I think that's part of some of the transitional thinking that we need to do.
Is that okay, Nick?
Yes, thanks.
Brilliant, great. Thank you. Thanks, Matt, Ahmed and Craig. I just wanted to bring on, we've got Dominic Hare, CEO of Blenheim Palace, with us today, and I just wanted to get Dominic's take on how his business is coping with the current situation, just getting a bit of an insight. And also, are there any rumours, is there any truth in the rumour that you've taken a part-time job in a call centre then, Dominic, or just a fancy headset for today?
They wouldn't employ me anywhere, I tell you what. I've got to hang on to this job. Yeah, thank you for that. So really quickly, our biggest exposures are to the visitor economy as a tourist attraction, and to property and increasingly property construction. Our visitor attraction and related businesses are closed, other than the park being open to locals. Our building businesses are on site and building, and bizarrely we are selling both new reservations and completions, which is, I think, reassuring to a sense that at least some of the public are absolutely looking through the crisis to the other end. Currently, we want to open the visitor attraction as soon as we can. As the latest guidance is written, that looks like July for the outdoor spaces. However, there's a furious amount of lobbying going on, not really involving us, but particularly the zoos, National Trust, Parks and Gardens, whose cost base hasn't changed for having no visitors. And they are arguing that open spaces should be allowed to move to phase 2 because they're almost the safest spaces you can go to, and there's no particular reason why it should be treated differently from a council-owned park or something. For us, it's been a fascinating period in that we all do occasionally zero-based reviews of our business and try to work out whether to deliver what we need to deliver, we should have all that we have, or whether there's a much quicker route to goal. And of course, this has become, for many businesses, a real world zero-based exercise. We've been quite brutal in driving through efficiency improvements. That having been said, we also I buy completely Ahmed's comments that businesses have to be honest with themselves about the cost and duration of this. And we've been explicit with our trustees in saying, this is going to be a U-shaped recovery of questionable span. We don't know how long. However, we do not want to lose people who we don't need now but will need in the future. We do not want to dump people into a terrible jobs market. So we've devised, consistent with our strategy, we've called it Blenheim QE, which is a way of trying to use that resource, not put it back into our businesses because that will make it inefficient again, but to give you some examples. Taking 1 or 2 marketing people who we won't need for the next few months and actually redeploying them to market the area, whether that's West Oxfordshire and Woodstock, which is already happening, or working alongside EO with Hayley. We're already developing some video content to push. We're looking at things like our plan to build cycle routes around our area, actually bringing that forward very dramatically to use that spare people resource and maybe funding that's available elsewhere, but that's actually not critical, to do that now and try and make something good happen from that resource. Tourism is there's no way tourism's coming back quickly. We're seeing more sentiment research than we've ever seen. It comes through almost every day. The recovery will be slightly slow and it will be very domestic. For the UK as a whole, that's not necessarily bad because we are a net exporter of tourist money. So if it stays in the UK, that's better. But of course, Oxford is is the archetypal global attraction. So we're lucky though, although we are very dependent on foreign tourism, we are sat halfway between our 2 major population hubs. And so, there is the ability for Oxfordshire, EO and others to, with shared resource, to compete much more in that domestic market, but we will have to compete. Birmingham already is putting out some really impressive material, trying to build a sense of place and make local people come to move around their place and visit and draw people in from outside. And of course, Birmingham's never really had that kind of sense of place before. So we have competition. I've probably gone on longer than I expected there, but I think Blenheim's QE will be our way of trying to power our way out of this. And as those of you who've heard me talk before will know, I argue that's in our benefit too. So it's not a wholly altruistic act, but certainly we've got the resources across our businesses to really help with some sort of county-wide or district-wide projects.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dominic. No, I appreciate it. No, Ahmed and I were only saying yesterday how much we missed you. So it's good to hear you and good to get a bit of insight into how things are going at the Palace. So appreciate your time.